Remodelers and custom builders, today we are talking about marketing budgets and how you can make an adjustment from the previous year into the next year. We're going to cover all of this, your goal, your current state, the gap, and how to reverse engineer so that as you charge into the new year, you have a better shot at hitting that revenue number. Now, a lot of people like to figure out their budget and how much they should spend based on a percentage of revenue. Sometimes that's a good benchmark, but many times it doesn't tell the full story. An example of that would be you are a $1 million company and you're trying to go to $5 million. That would be a 5x. If you just took a percentage of 1 million, say 5%, I don't think that's going to get you to the 5 million. And that budget should be different than a $1 million remodeler trying to get to $1.5 million in sales. 5x growth versus 50% growth, totally different budgets. So let's walk through the math so that you know how you can look at your current situation, your goal, and then how do you figure out where you should be for your budget. So let's start with the goal. We need a goal, otherwise we have no idea where we're going. So let's say our goal is to get to 5 million in sales. That tells us something, but it doesn't tell us everything. We need to know our current situation. So what did we do for sales the previous year? So in this case, in 2025. And if we did 2.5 million, then we're trying to double the business in 1 year. Okay, so this is helpful. Again, if you're a $1 million company trying to go to 5 million, or you are a $4 million company trying to go to 5 million, this will change how you think about your budget going into the current year. So now that we've got current, we need a few more stats here about our current situation. So one of those is just going to be our average job size. And we will use $100,000 as an average job size. So last year we did about 25 projects. This coming year, assuming this doesn't change, we need to do 50 projects. Okay, then we also need our gross margin. And so we are going to use a 30%. And if we turn that into gross profit, we'll know that is $30,000. 30% of the $100,000 is $30,000. Okay, so we've got average job size, we've got gross margin. We also need to know what our close rate is in sales, and we will use a 25% close rate. And then we also need to know leads. So we need to pull our lead count from the previous year. And so in this case, we had a total of 300 leads that came into the business. So a little less than 30 a month. Okay, so this gives us kind of our current state snapshot. That's what 2025 looked like, and going into the next year, we've got some aggressive growth goals. We're trying to double the business and get to 5 million. So now we are going to move into the gap, which is what's the difference here? And so we'll have our gap, and our gap is just the difference in revenue. So we're going to take the 5 million minus the 2.5. We've made it really easy on ourselves. And so we need an additional $2.5 million. That's helpful, but we need to keep breaking this down because we can't just kind of snap our fingers and say, great, let's go out and get $2.5 million. What is that comprised of? It's comprised of projects that are $100,000. And so 100 into 2.5, we need, so this is number of additional projects. And we need 25 more than the previous year. So we need an additional 25 projects so that we can hit our goal. Okay, so now we have our current state. we know some basic metrics about the business. We have our gap, which is the differential where we're trying to go, and we know how many more projects we need. So we can use this information here to reverse engineer what we need. And so we can take our number of projects and divide it by our close rate. And so if we need, let's get out our calculator here, if we need 25 additional projects, we're going to take our 25 and then we're going to divide it by our closing percentage. That means we need 100 appointments because this close rate is based on appointments. So if we go appointments needed, we need 100 of those. And we can see here that we had 300 leads. And so what we're trying to figure out in here is like, hey, if we just get a lead into the system, how many leads do we need to get a project out the other end? And so in this scenario, if we backtrack out, hey, we had 100 appointments, but we had 300 leads. If we divide those, we can see, okay, we convert 33% or a third of our leads into first appointments. And so right here, we're going to multiply that by 3 because we close a third of our leads into appointments, and we're going to need an additional 300. Since we're doubling the business, you can see that these are basically identical. And so if you have a different goal here, if you just needed 1 million, then you would take that 1 million divided by the 100K. This would be 10. And then you would take your 10 and divide it by 25, and that would give you your appointments. And then you divide it by 0.33 again to get to leads. And I think I'll just do that here because I have received feedback that walking through the math multiple times is helpful. So let's say alternatively you were trying to add $1 million, so your goal was 3.5 instead. So we need 10 more projects. That's 1 million divided by 100,000, our average project size. That means 10 projects at 100K gets us our additional 1 million. Then we know that we have a 25% close rate. So we're going to take our 10 and divide it by 0.25. That means we need 40 more appointments, and then we have a 33% rate of converting leads to appointments. So we'll divide that out. And so we need about 122 more leads. Okay, so now we know our current state. So our current marketing, whatever you did in the last year, there's a high likelihood that if you repeat that marketing plan, you will get the same result. And now we need to add on this. We actually need twice as many leads. So what are we going to do? Or if you're in this scenario, we need 122 more leads than the 300 we got last year. And so we need to look at increasing that. Okay, so this gives you the lay of the land to get started. We have our current state and we have our goal, and then we've broken it down not just from revenue, but all the way to lead count. So from there, we can look at our current marketing budget. So let's go back to current, and we're going to look at our budget. And let's say over here, we spent $75,000. And that was our marketing spend that got us the 300 leads and the 2.5 million. Now, a very simple way to just go through this exercise and say, hey, I'm going into the next year would be, hey, I'm happy with this, then I'm just going to take this budget and I need to double my business, so I'm going to double my budget. That would be the very simplistic way to do it. Now, I did say if you were happy with how this budget got spent, this is the next step that we're going to break down. We're going to talk about how do we figure out, are we happy with this $75,000? And what you need to do is actually look at the channels. And so we're going to look at our budget of $75,000, and we're going to look at, okay, we did, we're going to call it website, content, SEO, AI, this bucket here, which is the content engine bucket. Then we're going to have an ads bucket, and then we're going to have an offline bucket. So we had $75,000 that we spent, and we're going to say we spent 25 in all of those. So we just split our spend evenly. This step is really important because we can look at these spends and then how many leads did each of these produce, and we got 300 total leads. And if you're looking at this bucket and you're seeing, hey, I got 150 of my leads from this channel, that means I had 150 more. But if I got 100 leads from this channel and I got 50 here, you can quickly see, hey, I spent the same on all these, but this one had the most leads, this one had the second most leads, and this one did the worst. So if I were to just spend this money better, I would hope that I could outpace the 2.5 million. So you might just say, hey, out of this 25K, I want to keep some of it. There's a couple of things that I do here, but I'm going to make some adjustments. And so we'll go web, we'll go ads, and we'll go offline. And if we were to say, hey, we're going to keep about 10 grand of this, but now I've got 15 grand to reallocate, all things being equal, just quantity of leads, I would just repurpose that 15 up here. Now, as you dig further and further, and we're not going to go that deep in this video, I've done a number of other videos breaking down your return on specific channels. All things being equal, if the volume equates to the same volume of jobs over here, then we would just put all of our extra money here. Now again, if ads, these 100 leads produced half the revenue, we would want to know that, and we might actually be pouring more of it into here. We're just looking at leads for the purpose of breaking this down. So then in this case, we'd punt 15 grand up here. We'd say that's 40K, and then this one's going to stay the same. So this is the same budget, but we've looked at our lead flow from our different channels and just shifted where we spend it. Now that we've done that, we've made an improvement over how we spent our money last year. Now we can layer in this. Like I said, the simple way is just, hey, we spent 75, we got 2.5, we're trying to double, let's just double this to 150. I like improving and then increasing if we can, because if this wasn't super efficient, it's really easy to just adjust that budget if we have, again, a couple of channels that we know are working pretty well. So now we've got this budget, and then we could say, you know what? Doubling the budget sounds really aggressive. I do want to double my business in a year, which is also aggressive, but I'm not sure I can swing that yet because I'm still a $2.5 million business. I'm not sure I can spend the 150. So, but maybe I can go to 125 or 120. I'm going to increase this maybe by 50% instead of double. And so then all of these going into the new year, you might say, okay, I'm going to grow them by 50%. So this might go to 60K. This might go to, what is that, about 13, so 38. And then this one, you might say, yeah, okay, maybe we'll still double that again. Again, we made the improvement, we shuffled budget away to get to this optimization, but then if we're saying, hey, we still kind of trust the mix and we're increasing, then now we're going to increase them all back. So you end up decreasing this budget by about $5,000 and you reallocated it over here. If you really saw that this channel wasn't working, I'd say just keep it at 10, you take that extra 10 and maybe put 5 more and 5 more here. So you're going to use some judgment, but hopefully you're using a lot of that judgment based on real data, and you're looking at these 150 leads, you're looking at these 100 leads, you're looking at these 50 leads, and ultimately you want to see how many projects did I get from each of these 3 channels. And if there are a couple of channels that are giving you way more projects, that's how you make this improvement to a better allocation of your original budget. So as you're going into the new year, you want to look at what you did for revenue the previous year, what your goal is. Again, doubling your business versus adding $1 million is going to be very different in this scenario. You're going to need to adjust your budget in a very different way, getting 122 more leads versus 300 leads. We want to know our average job size. That way we know how many additional projects we need. We need to know our gross margin. We need to know our close rate and our number of leads. And so that way we know, hey, as I'm going into the new year, I have these lead targets, and those are things that I can measure on a weekly and a monthly basis to see, am I roughly on track, right? If I go into this year and I need 300 leads from last year plus an additional 300 leads, and so in 2026, I need 600 leads. Every month, I need 50. And so you can look in January and in February, am I getting 50 leads a month? Am I at 40? Am I at 20? And that will tell you if you're on track. Now, the last thing I'll note is that if you are used to getting 25 leads a month or 300 a year, and you're trying to ramp up to 50, you're not going to necessarily flip the switch and all of a sudden go from 25 leads a month in December to all of a sudden 50 leads a month in January just because you increased your budget across these channels. There will probably be a ramp up period. And so as you're going from here to here, you want to see, hey, am I making progress from 25 to 50 leads a month? Not every month will be perfect. There's seasonality, so you'll just have to use some past history to make that determination. But if you follow this process, you can do two things. One, you can be making better adjustments to your current budget by looking at what you did, seeing what the channels were and what the output was. And then two, you can make a strategic increase in your budget so that you have a better shot at hitting your ultimate goal of 5 million. So how much should you spend on your marketing in 2026? The answer is classic. It totally depends, because it depends on where you are currently, and it also depends on what your goal is. All right, we'll see you next time here on Builder Funnel TV.